Hello everyone, this is your head coach Kuya Kyle, and today we will be ranking every controller that you use for Smash Ultimate, and we're going to put them on everyone's favorite little tier list. So today's a pretty fun class, and I hope you'll enjoy. So this will be an in-depth comparison between the different types of controllers you can use for SSBU. We'll start off by identifying some common control scheme settings to support your competitive growth, and then we're going to discover which controller is best for you. I have a little quick preface before we get into all this. Then we'll go over some control schemes, and then we'll get into the fun part, which is a controller tier list. All right. So first off, there are many different types of controllers in the world and a lot of different control settings. Or some people just prefer one thing over another. Some others need certain accessibility options. So honestly, just make sure that whatever that you use, that you just feel comfortable with it. And that's really the most important part of all this. Like I've seen people play Smash on a Guitar Hero controller. I've seen this controller in real life and it actually felt kind of nice to play on a GameCube controller with a whole keyboard in the middle. So whatever works for you, go for it. All right, so first off, we're going to teach you how to actually change your controls. So what you do is you go to Smash, find the Joy-Cons button, and then you could select a name, and from there you'll be sent to the button settings. Or you could set up or go through the side menu by pressing Z or ZR, go to options, click controls, and then you select a name. Either way works, but I think the first mentioned route with Smash is just more well known. All right. So some very common custom controls that I see throughout a lot of my clients and ones that I do recommend a lot if you're just getting into Smash Ultimate is first off, C-stick set to tilt attack. This is normally set to smash attack, but I find that a lot of combos require tilt attack, but most people have a hard time inputting forward tilt or up tilt. So I would recommend setting this to tilt attack, not only to make tilt attacks itself a little bit more accessible, but it also makes certain tech a lot easier, like sliding dash cancels or pivot tilt attacks. It just makes it a really easy to do. Next up is setting L or R to jump. So L or R is traditionally both shield buttons, but most people only use one button to shield, so you use the other button as a jump button. This helps for a lot of different things, such as forcing short hops. So if you press two jump buttons at the same time, you'll always get a short hop. So maybe you'd rather press one of the X or Y buttons and one of the bumper buttons at the same time, and that just makes it easier for you. Maybe your L button is just better with short hops, so you just like to jump with the L button or the R button. I personally don't use this because I hold my controller claw style or a claw grip, but if you don't do claw grip, this is a really great option for you. Next up, I like to have stick jump set to off. So this basically means when you press up on the controller, your character will do a jump. Kind of weird to use because if you press like an up B or an up aerial, or you maybe accidentally press up on your control stick, your character will burn your double jump if you're midair already, or you'll just accidentally jump when you don't need to. And that could throw off a lot of your timings, a lot of your combos, and just can be an issue for your general movement. So having this set to off and just practicing jumping with the button is just a lot better in my opinion. Just remove all of that, all of those issues aside. And lastly, rumble set to off. This is more of a personal preference type of thing, but whenever my controller rumbles, it normally happens when either you're doing a combo or you're getting hit, and it might overstimulate you or it might be very distracting. So I just set it to off so I don't have to worry about any of that. But if you like rumble, go for it. All right, let's get into the fun stuff, the tier list. In D tier by itself, we have a single Joy-Con. The pros of a single Joy-Con is it's very convenient if you need controllers for a large party. So let's say you have 8-player Smash Up and you have all your friends over, but you don't have enough of the other controllers. You could just use single Joy-Cons and that could easily supply controllers for the whole crew. and it's really easy to travel with. It just fits in your pocket like it's nothing. And those are basically the main pros of this controller. The cons is that it's extremely small button, so it's really easy to press a different button when you don't need to, or it's really hard to input a specific thing. You only get one stick to work with, which makes doing certain tech extremely hard. Just because you don't have like the C stick or the right analog stick to do smash attacks or tilt attacks. You have to do everything manually. Very easy to miss input because of just how small the controller is and it feels pretty frail. And the largest con of single Joy-Cons is the infamous Joy-Con stick drift. So if your Joy-Cons has gone through a lot of wear and tear, your character might just be walking to the left when you don't want him to, or if you have stick jump on and your controller drifts upwards, or technically if you're holding it sideways, it drifts to the right, your character might jump on accident for no reason, or the game will think that you're inputting up when you're not actually doing it. So it's just not, it's probably the worst controller to use for Smash, in my opinion. And you only would use this if you had to, or if you want to manually handicap yourself playing with friends. In C tier, we have the dual Joy Cons with the cool little handle. The pros is now you have two sticks to work with. So now you have the right analog stick to input your smash attacks and tilt attacks. You have double the buttons, even though these buttons are going to be used for taunting, but still double the buttons, even with the bumpers too. And the handles are kind of ergonomic. It feels pretty nice to hold in your hands. The cons is that the buttons are still really small, so you can still miss input really easily. And now, the first one we had one stick to worry about Joy-Con drift, but now we have two sticks to worry about. So now this left stick can be drifting in one direction, the right stick could be drifting in another direction. It's just a pain, just not worth it. So I wouldn't recommend doing dual Joy-Cons for Smash unless you have to. Um, that's really it. Now this one's a little bit probably the most controversial part of this class, but I think in B tier we have the box controller. Um, the pros of the box controller is that it's great for really precise inputs and it can perform actions that traditional controllers just can't do on its own. It's extremely durable and very ergonomic. It's basically like typing on a keyboard. You just let it sit on your lap and it's really easy to tap all these buttons. The main cons of this controller is that it is an extremely high learning curve. It is also very expensive. It'll take a lot of time and effort invested into this controller to be average at the game with. Like you can't just pick up this box and just expect to know how to use it perfectly as compared to like a traditional controller. And there is a bit of controversy surrounding the box controller, such as like because you could do these highly precise inputs really quickly once you learn it. People might see it as cheating. There's also like the whole macro discussion where like there might be a button that gives you a macro. Um, but don't worry about that if you're interested in a box controller. Just know that if you want to use this controller, you're probably coming from like a fighting game background with like Street Fighter or Tekken. So, but it's also good for like hand health. It's really, as I said, very ergonomic. So if you're interested in this and you have the money and time, definitely try it out. In A tier, we have the Pro controllers. These are your very standard controllers. It looks really similar to other console controllers like the Xbox controller. So if you played with those before, this is just like very simple to pick up. You have very easy access to every button compared to all the previous controllers because it's so standardized. And you do have some extra buttons for the bumpers, so you have more customization options from the button settings. The cons of this is that you don't have any notches in either sticks, so doing certain angle-based moves might be a bit hard. So let's say you want to hit like a perfect 45, it'll be hard to find that 45 with this controller. And the other con is that you might run out of battery during a match. This happened to me before while I was playing Elite Smash with this controller. Um, and just connection issues can cause you a game. So just make sure it's charged, or you just bring a wire with you, just so you don't have to worry about running out of battery. Still a great controller overall. And then the other A tier option is, they were called HORI battle pads. They're basically a new generation of GameCube controllers. It's basically a Pro controller that's shaped like a GameCube controller. It is USB wired, or it could be wireless. Mine is USB wired. It's very affordable, that you could find on very common shops online. And it's just really nice to play with. The only problem that I have with this controller, or that I've encountered, is that it does kind of have a plastic-like feel, which I don't really like too much. The buttons feel a little different. Almost, I don't want to use the word cheap, but it definitely doesn't come with the same quality as the Pro controllers or a game controller. But still very affordable, and if you need a quick controller like this, definitely invest in one. Mine's the Legend of Zelda decorated, but there's a lot of other designs. Like there's a Mario one, a Luigi one, a Yoshi one. I'm sure you can find one that suits your liking. And lastly, we have in S tier the GameCube controller. Of course, this controller has stood the test of time since 2001 with Melee. It has a very unique button design where the A button's really big. The jump buttons are really easy to recognize, and the B button's right here. The C stick is just so iconic here. There's also a very vibrant modding community, so if you really want mods for your game controller, they can help you out if you have the money to spend. I personally don't have any mods on my controller. This is my controller, by the way. I'm very proud of it. It's just a really cool Yoshi's Island design on it. Nothing too crazy in terms of mods, just a standard beautiful game controller. The cons is that it could be expensive because Nintendo doesn't actively produce these anymore, and you do need a GameCube adapter for your Switch to use it. So it is a little bit of an investment. And there's not as many buttons compared to the HORIs, the Pro controllers, and the box controller, because it is just the OG design. But if you have played on the Nintendo GameCube like me and grew up with Melee, Sunshine, Mario Kart Double Dash, this is just the way to go. But all the other controllers, again, everything that you could use, or if that you want to use, as long as you're comfortable with it, go for it. All right, let's do a quick recap of everything. So again, this was a controller tier list to compare all the different type of controllers you could use, as well as going over some control schemes. Remember that there are many different types of control settings in the world and a lot of different controller options in the world. So whatever you use, just make sure you feel comfortable with it. How to change your controls, go to Smash, hit the Joy-Cons button, and then select a name, or bring up the side menu, go to Options, Controls, and select a name. Some common custom controls is C stick set to tilt attack, one of your bumper jumps, or one of your bumper buttons set to jump, turning stick jump off, and turning rumble off. In D tier, we have the single Joy-Con. It's really small and good for a whole party, but you'll have stick drift, you'll have really small buttons, and really easy to miss input, so try not to play with this one. In C tier, we have the dual Joy-Con, so you have more buttons, and the handles are pretty nice if you have the thingy to connect it to. I don't know what you call it. Yeah, you have two sticks, ergonomic handles, but still you have Joy-Con drift and really small buttons, so I wouldn't worry too much about this one. In B tier, we have the box controller. It's great for really precise inputs. You can perform actions that are not accessible to traditional controllers. It's very durable and very ergonomic, but is a high skill, or you need a lot of investment in terms of financing, time, and effort for this one. So if you have the time, money, and effort, definitely invest into this one. And there's a bit of controversy too. In A tier, we have the Pro controllers. It's a very standard controller with a lot of buttons for more unique customization. Just make sure that you don't have to Make sure that you charge it before you play the game, and just note that there's no notches on the sticks. Next up, we have the HORI battle pads, which is basically a pro controller shaped like a Gamecube controller. It can come USB wired or wireless, and it's very affordable, but it does have a plastic-like feel to the buttons. And in S tier, we have the GameCube controller, which is just a classic since 2001 with very unique button designs and a very vibrant modding community if needed. But it can be a little expensive, and you do need an adapter, as well as not having that many buttons compared to the other controllers. Thank you for listening. I appreciate your time with me during this controller tier list, and I hope you all have a great day.